Honorable fellow members of the Secretariat, chairs, delegates, hardworking press team and staff members, distinguished advisors and guests. My name is Erin Park, and I am honored to welcome you and to serve as the President of the General Assembly for this year's MilanMUN conference. I will be chairing the General Assembly alongside my fellow members of the Secretariat, Secretary General Giorgio Piotti and Deputy Secretary General Dario Ambrosiani. This is our first and hopefully the last online conference, and we are really excited, proud, and delighted to be part of this unique event. All of this could have not been possible without the support and care of our headmistress, Mrs. Maria Rossi. She will now welcome us. We yield the floor to her.
Hello everybody and welcome to our 2021 edition of our MilanMUN conference. As the mistress of Cirico Polo Manzoni, I wanted to thank all the advisors and their delegates for joining us in this new online experience. In this strange period, when social integration is not allowed, this rebellious thought came to our mind. How can we live with no sociality? How can we continue to know a social relationship with our European and Asian friends? That is why we came up with this new online meeting. But don't get used to it, because we prefer having you all here to a face-to-face conference. And my strongest hope for all of us is to see you all next year in my city, in my school lobby, from room to room, taking care of yourself. I now yield the floor to my chair.
Thank you, Headmistress, for your warm words. Today, we also have with us our City Councillor for Education, Laura Galimberti, who has always joined us and encouraged us throughout the years. We are honored to have her here. Councillor, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good morning to everyone and welcome to the 16th edition of the MilanMUN in Milan, but not exactly inside the town. For me, it's an honor to be here today to underline the importance of this event that has become a strong tradition for the Manzoni High School. The link between countries and the relationship among its young citizens has always been important, and this year is made possible thanks to the digital technologies that allows us to overcome the distance deriving from the pandemic situation. Let's hope this difficult situation to end soon, in order to celebrate the next edition together with no need for a computer to connect us. What we learn in this year is the importance to create a relationship, to become citizens of the world and grow up together with an open mind. In this edition, you will go deeper on how the COVID has impacted the healthcare and the environment. In a global world, environmental sustainability is an issue that really affects all us. As a consequence, we need to be committed to safeguard everything is around us. My generation could have done more, maybe, in this regard, but we really hope that you can do better than us to secure the future of our planet. There is no planet B is a slogan you guys use a lot, and we all have to keep that in mind every day in all our actions. Finally, I want to thank all the schools attending today this special event. In the following days, you will go through very important topics, and I really wish you good luck and enjoy this opportunity. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Galimberti.
We now welcome our first keynote speaker, Mr. MilanMUN dalle Carbonari. Giacomo is the head of the delegation of PAI in Milan, which is an Italian trust mostly operated by volunteers, and its purpose is to protect Italy's exceptional cultural and environmental heritage. He was appointed in November 2019, and before that, he was a member and volunteer. At the moment, he is teaching fellow at Bocconi University, where he holds courses on place branding, territorial marketing, and cultural policies. We now yield the floor to Mr. Giacomo.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you again for the kind invitation. It is a great pleasure to represent the Italian National Trust and the delegation of Milano here with you today. And in welcoming all of you in attending this important event, I would like to spend a few minutes just to speak about the relevance of cultural institutions in supporting, let's say, the sustainable development of our societies. Let's first, however, try to answer to what to an important question. What is a cultural institution? Cultural institution means a public or non-profit institutions which engages in the cultural, intellectual, scientific, environmental, but also educational and artistic enrichment of the people and of the society. Cultural institutions are, let's say, institutions with a knowledge mission to engage in the conversation, interpretation, and dissemination of environmental knowledge, scientific knowledge, cultural values, and to inform and, most of all, educate citizens and societies with all the aspects related to our culture, our history, and the science. We have many examples of cultural institutions, from the more traditional one, like the museums, the library, the historical and botanical societies, but also community centers, performing arts institutions, and all the activities with which we engage every day. And nevertheless, cultural institutions play a pivotal role in the maintenance, conservation, and revitalization, and also interpretation of the heritage, and most of all in facilitating the interaction and the engagement between the community, between the citizens, and the heritage that we have in our cities and in our towns. They have cultural institutions and cultural organizations an anchor role because they have strong roots with the local communities, and they represent the history, the institutional mission, and the significance, in a way, of our territories and of our society. And arts and cultural organizations do not exist in a way in a vacuum. They exist as part of the fabric of our communities. And arts, most of all, plays many roles in the society at different times. Because it was able to speak to issues in areas such as religion, science, politics, and history. And whether, for example, introducing an international form of movement to the dance scene, or putting a modern spin on Mozart or Bach or Beethoven, or even providing a visual interpretation of the effects of war, or the effects of discrimination, the arts can provide thought-provoking commentary and innovative perspectives on a vast array of global ideas. Hence, arts organizations should play the part of the illuminator, conveying the power of art in the discourse of complex subjects. People often forget the significance of the arts in the discourse of social, cultural, and global concerns. And arts organizations need to emphasize the arts contribution and its relevance within the civil society. So, what I think is extremely relevant, especially in these days, is to highlight a specific role that arts organizations can play in the society of the 21st century, and especially in these times where we are facing a double challenge: the health issues on one side and the societal issues of, let's say, standardization of lifestyles and culture on the other side. And this current situation that we are experiencing today represents a fertile opportunity for the rise, for example, of extremism and populism and xenophobia. The diversity of Europe and the diversity of the communities where we are living, while enriching, it brings about many changes and many challenges as well. And providing an answer to these changes and challenges in order to promote social cohesion and social inclusion is demanded to the pivotal role and the anchor role that I was referring to of cultural organizations. So the task belongs also not only but also to cultural organizations and public and non-profit institutions working and intervening in this field. How can these cultural organizations do that? through the reinterpretation and through the exposures of arts and cultural activities, through the highlight of the work of museums, of performing arts institutions, of community centers where these organizations are working, and bringing about the necessary changes in the existing landscape will mean also devising the methods to gradually, let's say, alter the makeup of the existing cultural institutions. For sure, there is no one-size-fits-all to answer to these global problems and to these global issues. But the role of cultural institutions, the role that cultural institutions can play in supporting a more cohesive and a more welcoming society is definitely important. In this sense, I'm here today representing the Italian National Trust, and I want, in my conclusion, to briefly mention the activities that the Trust has done over the years. The FAI, Fondamento Italiano, was founded in 1975, and it's a non-profit foundation that took inspiration from the National Trust of England. The mission is to take care, promote and safeguard special places in Italy for the benefit of current, but most of all, future generations. And it acquires its assets, of course, through the collaboration and the contribution of the community. Today, FAI is managing 61 sites and is taking care of 61 sites that are representative of the cultural diversity and of Italy, and they represent also an opportunity to engage in cultural conversation and historical conversation that on one side reassure, let's say, the local populations with reference to its roots. On the other side, it allows us to tell a story and in a way highlight the great values of our culture and of our past. FAI is supported by more than 190,000 members, and it's doing many activities on the field, not only through its 61 sites and properties, but also, and most of all, with the cooperation with the schools. We have many cooperation with high schools here in Milano. This is one of the cooperation that we are having. And in addition to the work that we are doing, actually the work that we are doing is supported by a network of volunteers. There are more than 7,500 volunteers across Italy, and in Milano there are around 1,000 volunteers that over the years have supported the activities of the foundations with the unique and concrete objective of protecting our heritage and promoting the heritage. Hence, looking at the big challenges that our societies are facing and that you will be discussing as delegates during these days at the Model United Nations, please keep in mind the pivotal role of cultural institutions and the pivotal role that cultural institutions can play in a way strengthening the cohesion within our societies. I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a good, let's say, a positive meeting.
Are there any questions for the keynote speaker? Please raise your mute hand. Approval panel, you've been recognized.
Thank you, Chairs. We would like to ask, considering some countries' policies regarding creating COVID-free zones, so for example, Greece is vaccinating the populations of certain islands to promote tourism. Do you think this mass tourism, so like having that many tourists on small islands, is going to have a specific effect on the environmental heritage or the cultural heritage?
Well, definitely, as in many other sectors, the fast tourism and the mass tourism has damaged many local realities. We have many examples, not only in the Greek islands, but also in many communities around Europe or in Asia that have been greatly affected by massive waves of tourism. And the issue there in terms of policy is that public institutions must be able to maintain a balance between the needs of the local communities and the needs of the tourists. If you are eradicating the local identities in order to sell, in a way, your offering only to the tourism, then you are losing the cultural heritage. You're using the best practices. You're using the local communities, and hence it will be a problem. For sure. With reference to Greeks in particular and the Greek islands, it's a choice because tourism in particular, it's the most important sector probably for the country. Hence, deciding strategically to invest in a safe environment for the tourist, it can be strategically a win-win situation. The issue, however, is also to take into consideration how big is the wave of the tourism and how heavy is the impact on the local communities. I hope I answered to the question.
Yes, thank you.
Atena Longo, you'll be recognized.
On the microphone.
Please, Atena Longo, switch on your microphone and state your question.
Thank you for your speech. We just wanted to ask if FI is organizing activities for students.
Yes, among the projects and activities that FI organize at national level, we have the so-called the project called FI Scuola, where we provide and, let's say, promote cultural activities within high schools. The objective is to ensure the learning of high school students about specific pieces and part of the heritage of the local communities. So, for example, in Milano, we have done activities with many high schools, and we asked the students to identify an heritage in the city, study this heritage, and so do a research about its history, its value, its past, and then we organize a specific set of dates where the students will tell the story about this specific heritage to its peers or to the local communities. The idea is to support a better understanding of the community and understanding what we are today and where we are today through the study and the characteristics of our culture and our past.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Are there any other questions?
Okay, now we will move on to the second keynote speaker, Giuseppe Onofrio. He is a physicist, a researcher in the energy environmental field. He has campaigned for Greenpeace Italy for years. He served as board administrator for Italian Environmental Protection Agency, worked as a scientific director at the Institute of Sustainable Development Italy, a private environmental research center. From 2009, he is the executive director for Greenpeace Italy. Mr. Giuseppe Onofrio, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. As you know, in Paris, 2015, we had the Paris Agreement on climate change. And this year, we have the Conference of the Parties in Glasgow, which is very important because the current commitment of the different nations are absolutely not enough to curb greenhouse gas emissions that are increasing. Maybe in 2020, because of the COVID, we had a decrease, but all the emissions are increasing. And so I will try to give you some idea, in the case of Italy, what decarbonization looks like. But before that, I will introduce what Greenpeace is. Maybe you know Greenpeace by name, but maybe you have no idea how Greenpeace was born and how it's organized. So So Greenpeace has been founded in Canada, Vancouver, Canada, in 1971 by a group of peace activists that tried to stop the American nuclear testing in the Amchikta, which is an island off the coast of Alaska. In 1979, Greenpeace International was organized in London and then in Amsterdam, because a number of Greenpeace national organizations were growing, and so for having a global organization, there was the decision to found Greenpeace International. Greenpeace Italy has been founded in 1986. We are independent. We do not accept any money from companies, from the state, from institutions, from political parties or unions. Globally, we are now 3.4 million of supporters and more than 95,000 in Italy. We have around the globe 55 million followers, now 3.4 million of supporters and more than 95,000 in Italy. We have around the globe 55 million followers in social media and 1.5 in Italy, plus 1.1 cyber activists, people that are following our activities and they sign our petition and participate online. We operate now in 55 countries with 27 national and regional offices. There is a movie which is, I think, on Netflix, if you are some curiosity around how Greenpeace was born, is How to Change the World, which is a very nice movie. And so in case you want to have some idea, more close idea of how we were born, this is very nice. So the next slide. So how we work, we start from scientific analysis and investigations. We expose the issue. We do nonviolent direct actions, which is a specific way of Greenpeace for protesting against something that we think is wrong. And we mobilize online and offline, and then we lobby and negotiate with counterparts. This is the last mile of a campaign, and this is the most important maybe, because you can get some result only in the end. So it's not enough mobilizing, it's not enough protesting. We need then to have a negotiation with the counterparts to get some result. Next one. These are examples of nonviolent direct actions. The Stop Funding Climate Killers, the two activists were able to fly on the building of the Central European Bank, and we exposed that during the COVID and during this, quantitative easing, the bank has been buying shares of companies. 300 billion of euros went to fossil fuels. So the protest was done, I think, last week, and we also issued a report. You say a flying inflatable off the coast of Ragusa, Italy, against the offshore oil exploration and exploitation. Protect the Antarctic. Antarctica, as you might know, is a natural park. That was a campaign of Greenpeace at the end of the 80s. So the Madrid Protocol in 91 was protecting Antarctica on the land. Now we are campaigning to have a big area also off the coast at sea. So for protecting also the sea around Antarctica against destructive activities like patrolling. And the other one is in Rio, in Brazil, another action 10 or 15 years ago, I think. Next one. So we campaign on climate and energy, deforestation, oceans, sustainable agriculture, and toxic pollution. These are the main areas. These are not the only one, but these are the global one. And if you go to greenpeace.org, you can find all our websites around the world and having a more precise idea of our activities. Next one. The next, yeah. So we are now in a pandemic. Is this pandemic related to environmental issues? Yes, it is. Viruses, they spill over from wild species directly or indirectly to our species, to the human species, and these are related to biodiversity destruction, especially deforestation. There is also a possible link with climate change. The University of Cambridge has raised this issue with our research, which is debated. The impact of COVID has been heavier where the atmospheric pollution was worse. There are a number of studies now that say that more or less 15 to 20% of the impact has been worsened because of pollution of the air. Climate change will spread areas for mosquito-borne disease. So this is already happening in the Mediterranean and other areas. And long dormant bacteria and viruses trapped in ice can be released because of the warming of the temperature. So there are a number of interlinkages between climate change and environmental destruction and health in terms of viruses and bacteria. Next one. So we need to decarbonize. Decarbonize means we need to go to net zero emission of greenhouse gases. And we need to do a number of things everywhere, in all sectors. We need to increase a lot efficiency, how we do use energy in the final uses. So, for example, now we have the LED lighting, which cuts maybe 80% or more of energy for the same amount of light. And there are other technologies that can improve a lot the efficiency on how we use resources and energy. Next one. So we commissioned a scenario last year for Italy. So Italy, how to change the energy sector in Italy in order to decarbonize. Our renewable energy potential is very high. It's dominated by, in Northern Europe and other countries, wind energy is the most relevant one. In Italy, we have more sun than wind. Decarbonizing means, first of all, electrifying end users. For instance, using green electricity to for transportation, green electricity for industries, green electricity for heating systems. And so this means this is the first phase. And the second phase, we also need to produce green hydrogen in order to meet uses that are not, we cannot use electricity for that. And for doing that, we need to transform the power grid in order to manage huge quantities of solar and wind, which are intermittent energy sources. Next one. So there's a number of figures of our report. I will not spend much time on that. So what we need is to multiply by a factor 5 solar energy in Italy, at least double wind energy. This is for the 2030 intermediate step for decarbonization. We need to have to develop the energy storage in order to store energy when we can produce it and release the energy when we need it. We need to cut fossil gas consumption, to shut down coal power stations, and having 75% renewable in the grid in 10 years. Next one. The good news is that we will have also much more jobs. So 100 gigawatt of solar plants, we now have 21 in Italy. The roof that can host only maybe half of that. So we need utility scale, so industrial scale. It's not enough having solar panels on a family house. We need also utility scale, and we need maybe 0.5 of agricultural land for that. But Italy is highly populated, so we do not have desert. Can agriculture coexist with solar energy production? Yes, it's agrivoltaics. So I want to show you some images of what we need to see in our country in order to meet our energy needs with green energies. Next one. So we can have, ships around solar panels. Solar panels are, they can also follow the sun, so they can produce more, but they are not on the ground. So there is around the chance of ships or other animals to be grown. Next one. This is we can cultivate. This is, I think, I lost my English word, but you see these plants are quite, 2 meters high, so you can harvest down the ground. And also this plant, they can follow the sun. So this kind of plants, they can produce 35% more electricity just because they follow the sun. And you can have also agricultural activity around them. Next one. This is another example. You can have, for some specific cultivations, you don't need to have direct light from the sun. You can have a kind of specific, this is, I think, in Germany, they can grow specific products and having on top of them solar energy. So the sun is passing through, but part of the sun is converted into electricity. Next one. We can have also floating solar panels in ponds, industrial ponds, or in dams where water is stored for agriculture or energy production. This is with this simple solution, we could have 2-3 gigawatts in Italy actually, just using the dams. Next one. So there are advantages of agrivoltaics because the solar panels can protect soil moisture, and there are a number of studies in different parts of the world that shows that the agrivoltaics can preserve the humidity in the soil. Soil moisture is an issue because climate change is more and more drying our land. So this can be one of the measures that we can take in order to protect our land. Good coexistence with beekeeping, sheep farming, and also floating solar reduces water evaporation. And this is already actually used in India, for instance, for the channel that are used for bringing the water in agriculture. And India, of course, has a huge problem of evaporation, very high problem with water scarcity. So this is a good way to manage water and producing energy. Next one. And this is another technology that can change the energy debate, is floating wind. The floating wind is now, I think, the first plant is off the coast of Aberdeen in Scotland. After 2 years is now producing. This plant, you see, is 8 megawatt off the coast of Portugal. They are now testing it. The relevance of this technology is that you can put these plants far off the coast, and so you can have two advantages. First is you can have a much bigger plants. This is 8 megawatt, but in Denmark they are testing already 15 megawatt, which is almost the double of that. And next one. You see why the advantages, because the offshore wind normally is we have this kind of arrangement. You need to have maybe not more than 100-meter depth in the sea in order to have the normal offshore wind. The floating can be put everywhere because you can use you can anchor the plants to the ground, and this is a very small impact and actually has a very positive impact on the seafloor, as we see now. And there are a number of technologies that are under development, and this could change the global energy debate. In the Med, we have not such huge potential, but Atlantic, the potential is enormous, and around the world there is a lot of chance to produce electricity with offshore floating wind. Next one. So the advantages are more windy areas, much more wind plants with higher capacity, and restrict areas at sea. Where you have this plant, you cannot have other destructive activities like bottom trawling, for fisheries is a very destructive activity. You cannot have that in where the offshore floating windmills are because of the cobbles on the ground and the anchor system. So this means you can close areas of the sea, even off the coast and high seas, in order to close to other activities that are now very destructive. We know after bottle trawling passes, you have a desert on the seafloor. And next one. So there are many other technologies, but I have no time to show you. These are just for giving you some hint of what the carbonization can look like, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Giuseppe. And now are there any questions for the keynote speaker? If so, please raise your hand. MilanMUN Chair, please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much for your speech. It was really interesting and even inspiring, maybe to make us think of a carbon-free future. I have two questions for you. The first one is, why isn't hydrogen used widely as a fuel, even though it's very well known by the people, it's accepted by the governments and even by the public opinion? And the second question is, you talked about decarbonization within 2050 in Italy, but also in Europe and in the world in general. And possibly our societies will need to get ready to go even carbon negative after 2050. So since many scientific studies have said that nuclear power is crucial in this race, I mean, to be inserted in the energy mix together with renewables. So is there like a specific reason why you didn't even mention nuclear power, or maybe it was in these many other technologies that you didn't have time to debate?
Okay, I will start from nuclear. No, I didn't mention because Greenpeace opposes nuclear power everywhere in the world. So we were born against nuclear somehow. No, nuclear power is not a solution for many reasons. First of all, there are a number of issues that have never been solved with nuclear energy. Second point, the cost of nuclear has been increasing all over the years. If you look at how even the France situation, even in Western situation, the nuclear cost, the electricity is the costliest one. And it's interesting that the International Energy Agency in Paris, I think a few weeks ago, issued a report where solar energy is by far the cheapest energy in the history. So nuclear produces electricity, so it's just electricity. And electricity, you can produce electricity with much more convenient to do with renewables, is much less risky, and the new generation of storage, batteries, electrochemical storage, is now cutting down the cost to store energy. So if you compare the cost of generating electricity with renewables and storing them, the combined cost is half of the nuclear plants. So nuclear is out of because of economic reason and because has not solved the basic issues that are still not solved. Yes, we will need, our scenario is to decarbonize by 2040 Europe, and yes, negative emission. Yes, negative emission are huge. I think there is a great debate. I agree, this is an issue. And from Greenpeace vision is that the negative emissions, at the moment, the best solution is reforestation. But reforestation needs also to be done with scientific base, because it's not just putting trees here and there. There is a science behind that. And we issued a report on European forest just a few months ago, where we show that we could absorb the double of CO2 in Europe with a different management of our forest. On hydrogen is not an energy source, it's an energy vector. So electricity is a vector. You need a source to produce hydrogen. Hydrogen now is mainly produced by natural gas, so you have a lot of carbon emission. So in Italy, maybe we have already, because you need hydrogen for a number of industrial applications already, for fertilizers or for gasoline and in the petrochemical sector. So hydrogen, the issue with hydrogen is that the green hydrogen you can produce green hydrogen from green electricity from solar, wind, and other renewable sources. Electrolyzer that can split water into oxygen and hydrogen, and electrolyzers are still costly. So to see green hydrogen in the market, what we need to have is a big investment on electrolyzer, because already electricity from solar and wind is going down and down every year. The problem is our electrolyzer, and for instance, the European plan is to invest on 40 gigawatt of electrolyzer by 2030. And in the energy debate, the analysis is that if worldwide we'll have 100 gigawatt worldwide, we'll have green hydrogen will be cost competitive. In some way, what we need to see on hydrogen is the same thing we have already seen on solar. Solar 10 years ago was 8 times more expensive. And just because Europe, United States, and China and other countries have invested a lot of money, we have seen a dramatic decrease of the cost, and now solar is competitive. Just for giving you an example, today in Italy, in the gross electricity market, the price of electricity at the industrial level is between 50 and 60 euros per megawatt hour. The nuclear price promised by the UK government to the French industries is 105 euros now. So it's almost the double of our gross electricity market. In Spain, the last solar energy plants were approved with 25 So half of our cost. So of course, so you know that the sun is not working in the night. So you need systems in order to store that energy. So to overproduce during the day, store part of that energy and reuse the energy when you need it.
Thank you, China.
Firstly, I would like to thank you for your speech and your presentation. It was really eye-opening. Then I would like to ask you, do you think that the Next Generation Europe, the Recovery Fund, will be useful to shift towards a more sustainable society?
We hope so, at least, we hope so. So Greenpeace has been criticizing the European Union because the 2030 climate targets are not ambitious enough. But of course, most of the policies the European Union is doing are going in the right direction. The problem is they are not enough ambitious. Now the problem, and that's a huge issue, and there will be a very long conversation. I think we have not the time to do that. We have asked to President Draghi a number of requests. He has asked to, invited us with other NGOs to just before the government has been elected, and we were able to somehow give our priority how to spend this money. Naturally, you see that it would be not honest avoiding to say, you know, there is a big clash in the energy sector because the change, not everybody likes the change we need. If you can see who has invested in fossil fuels is now in the corner. We need to shift this investment away, and there are resistance on that. So I would say the oil and gas industries are not now in the best position. There are a number of changes that are happening in the financial market, in the power market. I can see positive. So the problem is, will the government shift enough money in the right direction without making too much compromise with the fossil situation? You know, Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, used to say that the problem of politics and of a reform is that when you need a reform, the big boss that are now in power, they know that you can damage them and they can try to stop you. The other that could benefit maybe are weak, or maybe they didn't know, they even don't know that there is advantages in the other policy. Okay, so the problem of I think President Draghi and the other politicians is very difficult because we need to shift away, and in the Next Generation EU, there is a fund called the Just Transition in order to help workers in the fossil fuel sector and other sectors that will be affected by the change to be reconverted in the new sectors. And this is a huge problem. I think is existential issue for the world fighting climate crisis, and this is by far the most important priority of this century. And I would say it's not just on you. I think my generation also has a lot of responsibilities, so we need to help you in solving the issue, but we are responsible, so we need, and I will be fighting for that until I am able to do.
Thank you, and thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Due to time constraints, we will entertain only one question. Kenya, you've been recognized.
This is the delegate of Australia talking, but yeah. The question is, what effective solution to ensure food security for all without perjudicating the environment would you propose, as current methods such as GMOs have proven to have negative consequences on the biodiversity? Great speech.
So if I got your question, because I didn't hear you in the last sentence.
Oh yeah, because GMOs, that is an alternative to ensure food security, has proven to have negative consequences on biodiversity and life in general. Yeah,
we as you might know, Greenpeace opposes GMO in agriculture. And GMO is not so strictly related to climate change, and biodiversity is the other big issue, because biodiversity means that we need to preserve the diversity of our nature, because only preserving biodiversity, we have a resilience of the system. So in some way, climate change, part of the climate change consequences are unavoidable. So we should be prepared to adapt and to resist to the changes, because some part of the changes are inevitable. And even the Paris Agreement says we need to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. In order to avoid the worst consequences of climate change, we need to preserve biodiversity, because the biodiversity is somehow more biodiversity means more resilience of the natural system on which we live. And GMO are a threat for that. So I think that GMO shouldn't be allowed, because we already have an agricultural system which is producing only few species, so it's reducing our diversity for production of food. We need to produce food and in a different way, and encouraging the different species to be cultivated. And maybe there are among our biological treasure we have around the world, we have also some solution in order to adapt with different species that are already ancient species are able to be harvested in a more difficult planet because of climate change. I think this is a huge scientific and technological and agricultural challenge, and agriculture, which is now is a part of the problem, could become part of the solution and need to do so. I think we need the FAO Director General was intervening in a meeting, exactly saying agriculture can, with the proper technologies and the proper approach, can help to store carbon in the soil, and this can be part of the solution for fighting the climate crisis in which we are.
All right, thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Giuseppe Onofrio. And now I will give back the floor to my fellow president of the General Assembly.
Honorable fellow members of the Secretariat, chairs, delegates, hardworking press team and staff members, distinguished advisors and guests. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has challenged us in every possible way. Humans are by nature social animals, but we were torn apart. We were separated by an invisible wall built by the virus, and we were deprived of our very nature, sociality. Not only did this pandemic reshape the way we perceive the world and live, but it has also significantly impacted the environment, our countries and their healthcare systems. With hospitals overwhelmed with COVID-19 patients, infection rates fluctuating, and never-ending lockdowns and sacrifices. COVID may have destroyed our routines and stability and spread constant anxiety and fear among us. But if we look at the other side of the coin, this pandemic has brought out our immense resilience and strength, the ability to put aside selfish and individualistic feelings for the benefit of the community, and to keep dreaming even in times where there seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel. I would like to draw the attention to younger generations, to delegates and students, who might not be as mature as adults and might not have the wisdom which comes from experience, but are blooming despite all the difficulties that this pandemic has sharpened even more. Youth of today, leaders of tomorrow, I, as the President of the General Assembly, am looking forward to seeing you interact with each other in order to merge resolutions and find innovative ways to fight our invisible enemy and its impacts. We hope that this conference will not only be a moment of debate and diplomatic relations, but especially a space of connection and cooperation, a way to exchange ideas, and last but not least, build new friendships. And I yield the floor to the Deputy Secretary General.
Student delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dario Ambrosiani, and I will be the Deputy Secretary General of the 16th edition of MilanMUN, alongside my fellow Secretariat Officer Giorgio Piotti, Secretary General, and Yerin Park, President of the General Assembly. It is with great honor that I welcome you to this year's MilanMUN conference. Since joining Model United Nations, I have had the chance to attend conferences and workshops, during which I met fascinating people who share my interest in understanding and addressing the issues that shape our world. I have also had the opportunity of debating topics of all sorts. I am honored to be surrounded by so many delegates from different countries. Even if we are forced to attend this conference on Google Meet, I am sure that we will be able to give life to fruitful debates, and as always at MUN, we will find solutions to the issues presented in the various committees. COVID-19 has altered the way students experience global challenges. The pandemic has shown students and youth leaders worldwide that global pandemics and global problems can be found inside their own homes, and that the issues the world faces impact every corner of our planet. This is why the Model UN is such an important activity for students to engage in today. Your agenda here covers many diverse subjects such as healthcare and environment, international conflicts, cybersecurity, and equal opportunities. And I'm more than happy to see such a broad range of subjects being brought up. Due to the vast number of delegates who have decided to join us, we have organized this conference in 3 committees: Disarmament and International Security, Social Humanitarian, and the Food Agricultural Organization, FAO. FAO in particular deals with very delicate issues in today's international scenario, and also touches on 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. These are Goal 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns, Goal 2, zero hunger, and Goal 6, ensure access to water and sanitation for all. Achieving these goals was also thwarted by the pandemic that broke out last year, the effects of which are seen even now with restrictions and lockdowns around the world. The social and economic aftermaths of this difficult situation are difficult for all countries to face, but with international cooperation and the debate on resolutions, we will find an answer to all our questions. This is why MUN is such an enriching experience. It helps you take the first step towards a change by making you conscious of what is happening in the world surrounding us. I wish you can leave on Saturday with great memories of this activity. Dear delegates, I invite you all to enjoy and have fun in this MUN. There was a lot of effort put into preparing this event. It is for you delegates to express your full potential as a diplomat and as a person. I now leave the floor to my fellow Secretary General, Giorgio Piotti.
Fellow Secretariat, distinguished guests and advisors, dear staff and delegates, it's a pleasure for me to be here delivering my speech. I am Giorgio Piotti, and I will be the Secretary General for this year's MilanMUN conference. It has been a very difficult year for each of us, and it brings me great joy knowing that we had the opportunity to organize MilanMUN virtually. Our daily life is now entangled with insecurity, but I hope that the conference will help everybody to take a breath of fresh air. Despite the situation we are currently facing, it is important to remember that many conflicts still ravage our world. It is our role here to bring a beam of light in this ocean of darkness that currently girs us. Think about the situation in Yemen. After 5 long, destructive years of civil war, the country is on its knees, as 80% of the population has lost all their belongings. But this is not the only conflict. Nowadays, after 74 years, the military conflict in the Kashmir region has not come to an end. We are all here united to face piracy and criminals that control our land and our seas, damaging all populations. We are all here to secure democracy and give stability to all those regions and nations in need, such as the Maghreb area. We are all here to bring peace. I might be overly optimistic, but I strongly believe that you, all delegates, could finally make the difference with your resolutions. Lastly, I want to say two last words. I hope you find MilanMUN conference as much entertaining as the previous ones, and I wish everybody a fruitful debate. We would like now to welcome you all delegates with an opening video prepared by our creative press team.
This method is very helpful, and we are willing to support it by sending our best teams of scientists to find better solutions. Thank you, press team, for this beautiful video that I hope you all enjoyed. And now, with great honor, I officially declare the 16th MilanMUN Conference open.
So, we would like to remind all delegates that at 4 p.m. the lobbying sessions will start in your committee meet calls. Please remember to enter your committee nickname to join the lobbying session at 4 p.m. We will now move on to the opening speeches by our honorable ambassadors. China, followed by Kenya and Canada, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, Secretary General, Madam President, honorable chairs, fellow delegates, and distinguished guests, the delegation of the People's Republic of China is deeply delighted to be here to represent our country and to be the first country to open this conference. We are conscious that the main domestic problem every country is facing at the moment is containing and overcoming the current pandemic. Thereby, as we were the first country being able to stop the virus and returning back to normal, and as the only G20 member which was able to sustain an economic growth in 2020, we are ready to lead the world, helping every nation to defeat the virus without discriminating poor country. We have in fact proposed a clause to supply vaccines for the Yemeni people, believing that no human being should be left behind. Together, we should strive for a greater world, fostering sustainable growth and continuing to lift people out of poverty while nourishing peace and stability. Doing so is not an easy task, but we believe that through dialogue and cooperation, everything is possible, and that's why we are here today. Therefore, on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, we thank you all for your attention and your presence at this conference.
Thank you, Delegate of China. Delegate of Kenya, you may proceed.
Ciao. Fellow delegates, I will be representing Kenya in the FAO committee. Although this committee may not seem as the most important, what will be debated here affects all of us. With 10,000 kids like you and me dying every day due to malnutrition, whilst wealthy nations waste a third of their produce, it's not a matter of there not being food, but on how it's distributed. According to recent agricultural reports, the COVID situation has increased the need for collaboration and global cooperation. The Kenyan delegation continues to believe in investments in the technological field and in the bettering of our global supply chains. Kenya, an agricultural-based tropical nation, still suffers greatly from food insecurity, proof that producing food does not ensure having food for all. This problem has to be addressed by each and every member state, as nobody is saved alone. Food security remains a global challenge as all the other matters at hand. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you, Delegate of Kenya. Delegation of Canada, you may proceed.
Dear Chair, fellow delegates, distinguished guests, the delegation of Canada is glad to be part of the UN since the beginning in 1945. It's a pleasure to join you all once again. We also want to give our warm thanks to every delegate of every country from everywhere in the world for helping to make the world a better place. Thank you for your attention. Have a good MUN.
Thank you, Delegate of Canada. We will now move on to the delegations of Eritrea, France, and India. Eritrea, you have the floor.
Secretary General, Madam President, Honourable Chairs and fellow delegates, we would like to welcome everyone to this conference, where we firmly believe true change can be achieved. We are grateful to see issues that deeply affect our country, such as education, food production, and environmental protection being brought to light. Eritrea, like all other nations, has been strongly impacted by COVID. We are still struggling with hospital capacity, testing for cases, and wide-scale disinformation. We hope that discussions at the General Assembly can ensure fair and necessary funding for the fight against the virus all around the world. In recent weeks, there have been a series of malicious and fraudulent reports about our nation's involvement in the ongoing war in northern Ethiopia. We want to remind all member states that Eritrea has always strived to ensure peace and stability in the Horn of Africa, and that choosing Eritrea as a scapegoat for a conflict it is not involved in will not only be useless in solving the war itself, but would also be dangerous for the future of many diplomatic relationships Eritrea has always respected with nations from around the globe. We hope that being valued and respected by all the countries at this conference, we can help create, together with the UN, a safer, fairer, and better world for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of France, the floor is yours.
Honorable Chair, esteemed delegates, the delegation of France is pleased to present its viewpoints in front of its counterparts. Faced this year with a worldwide sanitary crisis, putting our established systems and organizations to the test, our planet is suffering a threatening pandemic, directly contaminating millions and disrupting the lives of billions. This global virus opened our eyes to the shortcomings of our ways of life, especially the fragility of our systems in times of crisis. This delegation invites the United Nations to assess the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on healthcare systems and the environment, and to put forth possible solutions to contain the spreading of the virus. The delegation of France also encourages the other present delegations of the United Nations to evaluate the current vaccination situation and discuss the process's key points and success rate. This delegation considers that dialogue is the most effective form of problem solving and is strongly convinced that the United Nations will nurture fruitful debates that will ensure that members will learn from this pandemic and therefore be able to stave off future health crises.
Thank you, Delegate of France. Delegate of India, you may proceed.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, it is a great honor for my delegation to be here today at the opening ceremony of MilanMUN 2021 to represent India, a country full of history and cultural diversity. As a matter of fact, over the last few centuries, India has seen several changes thanks to the intersection of the different civilizations, which foster cultural dynamism in terms of language, religions, and values. Thanks to the long history of cooperation with our government, today the United Nations system in India includes 26 organizations that have the privilege to serve in our country. Our government has been working for years to help improve the inhabitants' living conditions. But this year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we encountered a significant issue that has hindered our development and growth plan. Despite the economic and technological growth decreased in the first 6 months of 2020, we have not given up, and we got involved in a huge mass production of the COVID vaccine for our citizens and neighboring countries, sending more than 15 million doses to 17 different countries. Our vaccines are suitable for the developing world, since they're easier to transport and cheaper. With a view to the future, India is managing to become the third world's largest economy, thanks to its population, which is among the youngest in the world. As a matter of fact, in an aging world, it's a privilege for us to have such a young population, full of innovative projects, focused on promoting sustainability in the environmental, economic, and social fields. We want to enhance the current and future potential in order to meet human needs and aspirations and guarantee a circular economy to limit the consumptions of our country. Finally, India would like to use this opportunity and thank all the organizers of this event and the United Nations as a whole. We put great trust in this international cooperation and hope to create increasingly solid relations with all member states. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of India. We will now proceed to the delegations of Morocco, New Zealand, and Palestine. Delegation of Morocco, you have the floor.
Honorable Secretariat, distinguished presidents, and dear delegates. As a delegation of Morocco, we are more than happy to participate in this conference. We would like to use this speech to shed some light on problems regarding democracy and security in the Maghreb region. These problems have a few aspects. One of them is human rights. Unfortunately, the Moroccan government has banned human rights activist groups from protesting or any public gatherings. Also regarding human rights, prisoners in Morocco have unfortunately been kept in conditions that violated international law. And the final aspect is one that concerns women's and girls' rights. Moroccan law does not criminalize marital rape and therefore puts women in danger. Furthermore, domestic violence has increased during the lockdown period that was caused by the coronavirus. Our country and our people have suffered enough. It has affected our people regarding our well-being. We wish that all countries work together to resolve these issues. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of New Zealand, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Honorable chairs, fellow delegates, indispensable members of the board, press, and staff. The delegation of New Zealand is delighted to be part of the MilanMUN. She hopes that her fellow delegates will engage in relevant debates in order to make this conference productive. As DISEC's main objective is disarmament and national security, we as New Zealand, an island nation, are experiencing several of these topics firsthand, specifically maritime crime and piracy, that has been affecting us since 1979. Yes, pirates. They aren't just fictional characters like Jack Sparrow. They do exist in real life, and they're definitely not from the Caribbean. We're looking forward to an engaging and enlightening debate together with present delegations. We yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of New Zealand. Delegate of Palestine, you have the floor.
Honorable PGA, most distinguished chairs, and fellow delegates. As the Ambassador of the State of Palestine, we would like to affirm our great appreciation to be in this conference that aims to establish reliance, dependence, and cooperation throughout the globe. We know for a fact that people have been suffering from famine, terrorism, left without source of food, water, shelter, and so many others. In this conference, as a country deeply affected by such issues, our first aim is, and will always be, to be as transparent as possible. As for the solutions of the issues, we are complacent with the relief that the delegates attending this conference will aim to establish the cooperation among the countries. We would also like to mention that we feel privileged to be here debating about world politics, issues, and establishing transparency, considering the global pandemic of COVID-19. Many people have been suffering from this highly infectious disease. Many people have lost their lives. We are hoping for a salvation as soon as possible, and we are honored to be able to look for solutions together here in this conference. As the delegation of Palestine, we find ourselves obligated to search for solutions of such vital problems. We believe that in such dire days, it is still possible to embrace the global peace that we solely seek to have. To conclude, we would like to restate a quote from Einstein. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. We are sure that in these days of this conference, we will establish the global understanding that we seek to have. Thank you. We yield the floor.
Thank you, Delegate of Palestine. We will now move on to the delegations of Peru, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Spain. Delegate of Peru, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Secretary General, President, and honorable delegates. Peru is privileged to be a part of this MUN conference and has been always a prominent voice in the Paris Climate Accords, ensuring that the whole world collaborates to stop the deadly threat posed by climate change and global warming to our society, to our general well-being, and to our civilization. We have been part of motions to mobilize vast amounts of money to ensure that people living in areas affected by climate change did not suffer the loss of their life and livelihood. This is a problem which has greatly affected us as a country, and we know and we sympathize with many other countries around the world who have also suffered these issues. Peru hopes that this session of the General Assembly will be just as fruitful as all the missions in the past, in the hope that the governments of the world can unite our fragmented society to achieve the UN's goal, which is the betterment of human life, no matter what obstacles are thrown in our way. Thank you, and I yield the floor.
Thank you, Delegate of Peru. We now yield the floor to the Delegate of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Honorable Chair, fellow delegates, and esteemed guests, we have been given the honor to open today's assembly. As a representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we understand the importance of participation and collaborations of all states and nations, no matter how small. We would like to take this opportunity to remind us all of the important mission we have in the world and the mandate that we have been entrusted with. The world is in a turmoil and humanity is suffering, and and we all face difficult challenges like the COVID pandemic and the destabilization of democracy in the Maghreb region. It is our collective responsibility to strive for a better world and to remember the importance of peace, security, rule of law, and the development of our people on this planet. We ask everyone to pause and consider the great obligation we have, and I pray that we all endeavor without rest to fulfill our successful conference. We all thank you and wish you a wonderful assembly.
Thank you, Delegate of the San Vincent and the Grenadines. We will move to the Delegate of Spain.
Your Excellencies, the members of the Secretariat, esteemed chairs, fellow delegates, lovely members of the staff, ladies and gentlemen. Spain wishes to tackle significant issues to debate. We are greatly concerned by the world's major problems, such as the protection of basic human rights, which continue to transpire in this modern age of acceptance and tolerance, and agricultural pollution, which is a major issue that threatens humanity's well-being. Criminal networks are thriving, inhuman treatment still exists in prisons, and starvation is a problem found in abundance all over the world. Spain's contribution as a member of the United Nations since the 14th of December 1955 to the discussion of these critical issues is an attempt to create a better world for all the people, and we hope that this conference will result in decisive, safe, and effective resolutions of the aforementioned important issues of our times. Spain wishes you all the most fruitful debate during these 3 days. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Delegate of Spain. We will now proceed to the delegations of Syrian Arab Republic, United Kingdom, Vietnam, and Estonia. Delegate of Syrian Arab Republic, you have the floor.
Most Honorable President and fellow delegates, it is a great honor as a delegation of the Syrian Arab Republic to participate in MilanMUN 2021. First and foremost, we wish every member state to enjoy yet another conference. Secondly, we find important and much needed to offer our sympathies to every country affected by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We believe it is our task as delegates to take initiative and spread awareness throughout each and every country. So we hope to see everyone alert to secure a tight international collaboration to solve this problem in the safest and fastest way possible, starting from respecting the already enforced rules. Being Syria one of the poorest developing countries, we would like to further remind how important it is for us and for every other country in a position as ours to receive external help and support. Syria is now also approaching the 10th year in war. This has already cost 500,000 of lives, not counting the ones that are being lost as we talk. Syria was already a poor country, and now it seems as if it is doomed to stay so. We are not only talking of soldier lives that are lost, but we are also talking of civilians and children that live in poverty because their lands are being preserved. We all believe no one should be bound to live in fear, and that's why we hope to reach fruitful solutions in these 3 days of debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now move on to the delegation of the United Kingdom.
Honorable chairs, fellow delegates, and distinguished guests, the delegation of the United Kingdom is delighted to be here. Let's go back to what Margaret Heffernan said once. For good ideas and true innovation, you need human interaction, conflict, argument, and debate. And all of us should be here with having in mind this philosophy, because we're here working as a group, working as the United Nations, and because we're here to solve problems that could affect us, that are affecting us, and that will affect us in 30 years. United Kingdom is in the top 10 of being the cleanest countries. We respect our forests and use renewable sources. We're working to introduce a new system in order to limit the usage of fossil fuels by 2030. Our goal is to have this everywhere. Life will be different if we change the way we produce energy. This hasn't finished yet. We believe that the implementation of a democracy in the northwest of Africa is totally necessary. And the United Kingdom has great measures of security, and we are fighting to expand the security throughout the entire globe. The UK also thinks that the situation in Yemen is totally unacceptable, and we, the United Nations, should work together in order to find the quickest and best solution. COVID-19 is a global problem that is affecting us socially, economically, and politically, all countries of the entire globe. This is why we need to work united and find a solution for the global issue. So for this reason, we encourage all member states present today to participate and to form a constructive debate to solve all problems. Let's end with a quote from Mr. Einstein. Problems get solved when we stop ignoring them. Thank you, delegates. We yield the floor back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate of the United Kingdom. Delegate of Vietnam, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, honorable delegates, and distinguished chairs, it is an honor to deliver this statement at the MilanMUN 2021 conference. For the first time in history, we are unable to gather at the MilanMUN. This, however, does not diminish our resolve and ability to deliberate and seek solutions for issues of common concern. We are facing the most formidable challenge since the birth of the UN in 1945, in particular the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, society, politics, and most of all, human life. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic serves as a stern warning to us all, requiring our stronger commitments and stronger actions to promote sustainable, inclusive, and human-centered development. We have successfully contained the pandemic while promoting social and economic development. Out of international solidarity and with the understanding that the pandemic is only defeated when we all win, Vietnam has engaged in cooperation and experience sharing with many countries, including support provided to those who were worst affected by the pandemic and to the common international efforts. Honorable Chair and fellow delegates, Vietnam has been a companion to the United Nations and contributed to the noble goals pursued by the organization over the last 75 years. We're a staunch supporter of the central role of the United Nations in the multilateral international system and have actively joined in efforts to realize the fundamental cooperation pillars of the United Nations, the maintenance of global peace and security, development, cooperation, and the protection of promotion of human rights. Revolution as well as the irreversible globalization. This opens up a range of new opportunities to guide mankind into a new era of economic growth, never seen before in history of our civilization, thus further bolstering the global mainstreams of peace, cooperation, and development. Yet the floor is also faced with new immense challenges. World peace has yet to be guaranteed. The situation in Yemen, the conflict in Kashmir and in the Middle East, Maghreb region, in Africa, and elsewhere. Conflicts or the threat of conflict are extant still, and immigration remains a pressing matter for many countries. So Vietnam looks forward to the further strengthening cooperation and partnership with all member states in promoting the effective implementation of the international provision to end the migration and slavery. From our long struggle for freedom and independence, Vietnam understands profoundly the value of peace, equality, self-determination, the right to the pursuit of happiness, and the democratic values extolled by the United Nations Charter. The voice of small nations and aspiration of disadvantage need to be respected, heard, and shared. Therefore, Vietnam is committed to be an active and responsible member of the International Committee and the United Nations. Thank you for your attention, and Vietnam look forward to a fruitful debate during the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Vietnam. Due to time constraints, we wouldn't be able to entertain Estonia's speech, but the delegation will have the opportunity to deliver their speeches in their committee room. We once again remind you that at 4 p.m. the lobbying sessions will start in your committee meet calls, and we once again remind you to enter your committee nickname to join. You will have a break until 4 p.m. Bye.